Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast, where we explore the connection between nutrition, performance, and health for busy, active people. My name is Claire Shortstein, and I'm a board-certified sports dietitian and endurance athlete with over 10 years of experience working with teenage and adult athletes of all abilities. I started this podcast to provide evidence-based guidance, inspiring athlete stories, and practical tips on a wide variety of nutrition topics so that you can feel better, crush your endurance goals, and thrive as a human being. I'm so excited to welcome my friend and colleague, sports dietitian Stevie Smith, back on the show for the first part of a two-part series on how various factors affect how you should feel yourself during exercise and especially during endurance activities. These will be shorter episodes than my usual, exploring a really specific question. And today's question is, how do speed and intensity change an athlete's fueling needs? This is in response to a question I always get from my back-of-the-pack athletes. They want to know, do I really need that many carbs or calories if I'm not moving very quickly? Or maybe a mid-pack athlete is not quote-unquote racing and wants to know how to adjust fueling. This was such a great discussion. We explored this question from all kinds of different angles, and we give you tons of practical tips and takeaways. So I really hope you enjoy it. Speaking of which, if you are enjoying this show, I would be so incredibly grateful if you could take a quick minute to give the podcast a 5-star rating and review and share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you don't miss future episodes. Thank you so much for your support. All right, here's my chat with Stevie Smith, all about how speed and intensity change your carbohydrate and other fueling goals. Stevie, welcome back to the Eat for Endurance podcast. I'm so happy to see you. It's been a minute since you've been here. How's everything going today?
Thanks so much for having me. Right now, while we're recording, it's March 6th and it's still snowing here. So,
oh gosh, I'm sorry.
We're getting towards the other side of winter. But if people don't know, I'm located in sunny Buffalo, New York. And I did sign up for the Buffalo Marathon this year. Yeah. And it's Memorial Day weekend. And I also bought a snowblower. So I sent my sincerest apologies to everybody that I ruined winter by signing up for the marathon and also buying a snowblower. So I jinxed it here, but we're getting.
I feel like buying a snowblower, I feel like normally then it wouldn't snow because you bought the snowblower, but yeah, who knows? Hey, at least you get to use it. At least it wasn't a useless purchase.
Right, exactly. I thought that's what was going to happen, but then I was like, oh shoot, I actually made it snow a lot this winter, and I'm so sorry. But yes, it was a big learning curve for me on how to use the snowblower. And I kind of felt like a badass out there with the snowblower. I'm not gonna lie.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I would really have fun with that. Also, for anyone watching video, we are twinning today in our green shirts. Woohoo! This was unplanned, but clearly great minds think alike. So here we are in our beautiful, what color is this? Dark hunter green? I don't even know forest green. Yeah. Forest green. We are sending off forest vibes. I love this. All right. So since it's been a little while since you have shown your beautiful face on this show, can you do a little quick intro? Tell us who you are and anything else we should know about Stevie?
Yeah. So hello. I'm so excited to be back. I'm Stevie Lynn Smith. I am a registered dietitian, board certified in sports nutrition. I have been practicing for 13 years this year, and I have my own online virtual private practice, Stevie Lynn Nutrition. That will be 5 at the end of this year. I am also an endurance athlete, grew up a team sport athlete, and a very avid dog mom as well. So sorry if you hear him barking in the background. But yeah, no, I, much like Claire, just love working with endurance athletes and active individuals and helping them learn how to eat to support, not just their performance goals, but really make sure we prioritize your overall health, your well-being, so you can show up in all aspects of your life and also train how you want to train and, kind of find happiness along the way.
Amen to all that. Awesome. So you are coming on for a series. We're going to do a part 1, part 2, as we were just discussing offline. So today we're going to be talking about how speed and intensity influence how you should be fueling yourself during exercise. And Part 2 will be how body size influences your fueling. And we very intentionally separated these topics because we, of course, do not want to imply that if you are a larger bodied runner, you are automatically slower. So we do not want to draw that link. But yeah, so if you see Stevie again very soon, that's because we are doing this 2-part series, which will be lots of fun. So the reason why I wanted to do this topic is, I think a lot of folks who are listening to this podcast fall into the mid to back of the pack. I include myself in that. I have not been racing recently, but I've always been firmly somewhere in the mid, maybe end of the mid pack or something like that.
Yep.
I know I have a lot of clients and members of Fuel for Life Crew, my membership, and other people who are constantly kind of asking me the question of, okay, well, but I'm a slower runner. Like, what does that mean for my fueling? I hear you guys talking about, you have to get all these carbs in and all these calories in and all this, all these guidelines. But what if I'm not actually going that fast? What if I'm not quote unquote racing? So there are lots of things to explore and we're going to do that. But that's kind of like the big question that we're tackling today. And I want to point out that speed is, of course, relative. Same with, so we always think about, okay, well, if you're going at whatever pace it is and it's a quote unquote slow pace, like maybe you're a, 5 or 6 hour marathoner, not a 3-hour marathoner, but like, is that intense for you? Is that fast for you or is that slow for you? So we always have to think about all of these things in relative terms and how you are pushing your body. So yeah, I thought we could start with breaking down some basics. And for now, maybe we can start with carbs since that is largely what we focus on with fueling our athletes. So yeah, how do speed and intensity change our carb fueling goals?
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, we're team carbs over here, right? Carbs are body's preferred fuel source. Already stumbling over my words, but especially during endurance exercise. But also, when we think about it, carbohydrates are a more efficient fuel source than fat. That doesn't mean that at lower intensities, our body is not using fat for fuel. It is, but we want to think about getting the most bang for our buck. Carbohydrates are more efficient than just relying solely on fat as a fuel source. So when we're thinking about exercise intensity, of course, duration is a big player in, okay, how are we fueling? When do we need to fuel? How much fuel are we looking at? But when we're thinking about it, if you're at, and I know Claire mentioned intensity, right? Like 60% of your VO2 max or above, your body primarily relies on carbohydrates as your energy source. So we want to prioritize carbohydrate intake during those activities, especially if we're over 60 minutes and beyond. So when we're thinking about like, okay, maybe like you said, like you're a 5 or 6 hour marathoner, which is great because like you are still actually running a marathon, your body very much still deserves fuel. And well, you might not know like, oh, am I at 60% of my VO2 max during this run? I would say if you're running a marathon, you're very likely going to be in that range where we want to utilize carbohydrates as our main fuel source. Now, when we're thinking about it in the context of higher intensity workouts, right? So we're thinking about like longer speed sessions in that, I say 60 plus minutes. You might hear other people say over 70 minutes. The higher the exercise intensity, the slower our stomach is going to empty. So if you're working at over 80% of the VO2 max, the time for that fuel, those fluids to empty from our stomach is longer. So that is going to impact fueling. That doesn't mean that we don't fuel those workouts. We just need to be a little bit more strategic about fueling those workouts. And when I'm thinking about this too, I think about it, I've been taking treadmill classes this winter on wood-weight treadmills. My friend Kathleen has a running studio here in Buffalo, and it's been like amazing. But I'm in some like half marathon pace intervals and I'm drinking my sports drink. I'm taking my gel. Because to me, like, okay, like, yeah, like, cool, there's the science of the VO2 max. But like, practically, if you are setting your half marathon pace at whatever it is, say it's a 9-minute mile, and you're working in those working sets in a workout, but you feel like you absolutely cannot take a gel or a sports drink, that's something we want to practice, right? Like,
yeah.
What is your goal marathon, half marathon pace, your goal marathon pace, and we know we need to fuel because it's going to be over 60 minutes? Like, we need to figure out and practice that fueling. So we train the gut. We find out like what type of fuel are we going to take, what flavor, what texture, etc. Or we need to kind of like reevaluate that like maybe this isn't the appropriate half marathon pace if it's such a high intensity that we feel like we can't take the fuel. So I love the science and like the whole VO2 max thresholds that we think about, but I always just think about that in my head, like in practice, like if this is your goal pace and the race is going to be over an hour, like you need to figure out how to stomach that fuel and practice with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so before we kind of really dig into, because again, I really want today to be focused on these like mid to back of the pack runners. Before we like, really dig into that, there's been so much attention on super high carb fueling and really like a more elite performance. And then it's really kind of interesting to think, okay, well, how does this apply to the average recreational athlete? And again, not to say that just because you're a recreational athlete, you're not going really fast, you're not super competitive. Like again, all this stuff is relative as well. But I think we've heard a lot of like, okay, cool, we're going like 90 to 120 grams an hour and all this stuff. And I think, and maybe we can just spend a little time here. I mean, I think the thing to remember is that a lot of the times these athletes, I mean, especially when we're talking elite level athletes, are working extremely hard. and it's just a completely different situation. And I'd love to kind of hear your take on just like kind of putting this piece into context before we explore the other end.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I'm so glad you bring this up because, I'm guilty. I'm like all in on this high carb. Like, I feel like, it's funny. I was going to do a reel about this, but, I
Life.
never got about that. But somebody's like, oh, are you in this like 100 gram of carb per hour trend now? And I was like, first of all, I'm not new here. I've always kind of like skewed more towards higher carb, but that's just some of that's my personal preference and like how I train, right? Like often I'm doing 2-a-days between swim and run, lift. So like I look at that like in the context of the big picture of my overall training load and volume.
Totally.
Well, I'm not like elite competitive. I consider my training volume just like over the years being more towards that end. So I am always more generous. I don't know if you feel like this as a sports dietitian, but like I am so hyper focused and almost anxious about like underfueling or bonking.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
I'm always like personally like a little bit more generous on this end.
Yeah.
I gotta be on top of it. Like,
yeah. I mean, like, why am I bringing sports drink to my 45-minute swim? Like I've commented, like, I don't necessarily need it, but I mean, I think what you're trying to get at too is that it's all about kind of seizing different opportunities to fuel yourself and make sure you're not in a deficit, right? And we talk about we're talking performance fueling today, but like when we think about everyday fueling, I'm sure you've had these conversations so many times. It's like, why should I eat if I'm not hungry? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, or why should I eat? Which, it's like, we just want to like seize this opportunity to get fuel, get food into your body, because when you do take that step back and look at the overall context of all the things, like you need it. and we really want that, and you're going to benefit from it. Okay. So, but again, when we're in this kind of super duper high carb fueling. So for you, you're saying that you prefer to kind of be on the higher end, but let's say for the average person.
Yeah. It's a fine line, right? Like I tell people, play around with it, get curious, like see what works, see what doesn't work. I just feel like in general, I see a lot of people trying to get away with the bare minimum.
Yes.
And like, well, yeah, like if you're like, I hit 60 grams and I'm super proud and, I'm not training that much, I'm just literally doing this for fun. I'm not, going super hard all the time, big training volume, big intensity. Like, this is good. This is an improvement for me. Like, I think that's great. Right. But it's just having that honest, and I'm sure you have this conversation with your clients. It's the why, right? Like, are you just going for the bare minimum because you're still having like, just like underlying thoughts of restriction, or this is too much, or you're concerned about sugar or calories, right? Like, is that reaching for the bare minimum coming from a place of like unhealthy thoughts and restriction? That's where I would like people to like reevaluate kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to think about this differently. And like, how can I be curious? And, for me personally, when I was racing Ironman, I was probably in the 70 range for like 11 and a half, 12-hour races, 70, 75 per hour. And now I've gotten higher, but that was all out of curiosity of like, okay, I've done this, but like, maybe you're a person who's at 50 and you bump up to 60 and you notice you recover better. So your energy is better for the rest of Saturday after the long run with your family. So like, even if you aren't like, you know what, like I'm out here just doing it, having a good time. I don't consider myself like competitive or elite, but you can see that translate, like a little bit more fuel translate into more positive things and how you can show up in your day-to-day life. Like, I think that's amazing and something that a lot of people don't even consider as to like, oh yeah, like I can do my long runs with 50 grams of carb per hour, but like if I bump up to 60, 65 and I have more energy and I recover better and I can just not feel tired and need a nap, that's huge. So
Yeah, 100%.
like a little bit more of like that realistic, like I don't think every person needs to try to shoot for 100 grams of carb per hour.
Yeah.
Even 90, but like play around with it. And if you hit 70 and you're like, this is a little bit too much for me, but I tried it, and you can back off a little bit and still be a well-fueled runner. Hey, there's nothing wrong with trying and finding a spot.
Yeah. It's so funny because as I was talking about the high carb fueling and kind of starting to ask about that for like other athletes, I was thinking to myself, what am I talking about? No one is coming to me being like, Claire, can I, like, I tried to do 100, like, what am I talking about? Literally everybody is struggling to get to 60. This is not, at least in my population, this is not like a standard common thing that I'm seeing people do. I will say though, I mean, I see so much evidence of exactly what you just described, where people are pushing how much they're taking during training runs or, bike, swim, whatever they're doing. Because again, we're not just talking about runners today, and then they report, feeling great during, feeling great after, feeling great the next day. So remembering that it's not just about that moment in time, you're kind of investing in the future and all of that. I wanted to take a quick break to shout out my virtual private practice, Eat for Endurance. You may think that working with a sports dietitian like myself or like Stevie may not be within your budget, and I wanted to make sure you're aware that I have many free and extremely low-cost resources and services available. I currently have 7 free nutrition downloads that you can grab on my website, eatforendurance.com. And if you want direct access to me but have a limited budget, then you'll love my nutrition membership, Fuel for Life Crew. For just $30 a month, you get to ask me all your nutrition questions, get the support of a small but growing community of busy, active people just like you, and you also get full access to my online nutrition resources and live monthly calls on different topics that you actually help choose. Pretty cool. Also, there's no commitment. Try it for a month, cancel anytime, not a big deal. Visit my website, eatforendurance.com, to sign up or to explore my one-to-one nutrition coaching services. All right, let's get back to the episode. So we're talking about, people are often struggling to meet minimums, whether it's intentionally or not, whether it's from like tolerance issues or lack of knowledge or restriction, whatever it is. But often I do get people, and what immediately comes to mind is like an ultra runner who is, maybe they have a fueling target. Maybe it is 80 grams an hour or 70 or whatever it is for carbs. Again, we're still talking carbs here, although we can open up to other nutrients. And they're talking about how, of course, because in ultra running, there's a lot of walking. And sometimes it's very intense walking if you're like going up a hill. But there will be times where they slow down or they walk, or maybe it is climbing. Maybe it is just they're having some issues and slowing down or whatever. And I always get the question, okay, but do I need to like really stay on top of my targets? Do I still really need 80 grams of carb an hour? Let's explore that for a minute.
Yeah. I mean, again, I am always more generous with this.
Yeah.
I would say like as close, I always think about this in the context of Ironman. I mean, I have done one ultra, but I'm thinking more about like the context of Ironman and like, towards the end of the day, like it gets a little weird out there, right? Like things start to sit different at a certain hour, no matter how well trained and like how much you practice it. Like it's normal. It's a very long day. So I tell people just honestly try to stick as close to the plan as you possibly can. You are still moving. Your body is still working. And this is kind of where that fueling early and often concept comes from. So then we're not at the end of the race trying to play catch up. You're still exerting yourself. And kind of just to the conversation we were just having is that these exogenous, so like outside carbohydrates intra-workout, intra-race are also going to help you recover better, right? So they're going to help your body feel better the next day and the next day and get through that recovery period, depending on like what your schedule looks like. You know, some people race a lot back to back. Like, again, a lot of our athletes get caught up like in the how is this going to impact me right now, where us sports dietitians are like zooming out and looking at the big picture. So even if the intensity is lower, or it might not even be lower, even if you are slowing down, like your intensity can stay. I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah.
I'm going this way, so my heart rate is still here.
Yeah. Dude, I am so out of shape right now because I've been barely running. And like, I had a run this morning. I think I did 4 miles. And I looked down and I'm like, I feel like I'm working so hard. And my pace was like 10:15. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I thought I was dying. I was like, this is how I used to feel, like 2 minutes faster per minute. I'm like, or per mile. I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, anywho.
But yeah,
fun
so
times.
Like, even if you're slowing down, that intensity like can still be up as well. But I'm generally more generous that like maybe you have to walk for like a couple miles or a little bit, but like you're in the middle of an 11, 12-hour race and you still have a ways to go. Maybe your body just needs that little bit of time to regroup, hydrate, fuel, and then maybe you can feel a little bit better, an hour later, right? So, with the long endurance races, ultra, I always think in my head, like adapt and overcome whatever's going on. And typically skipping fuel isn't the way to do that. Maybe the fuel needs to look different than the plan. Like I think about an Ironman marathon where I'm like, can't do the gel, but I know carbs, fluid, sodium, these are my key 3. So like what's going on at the aid station that I can get some of those things.
Flat Coke. That's been a very popular one with some of my athletes who ditched the gels.
Yeah, I'm a celiac girly, so I always put gluten-free pretzels into my formerly known as special needs bag. I can't remember what it's called now. Something.
I don't know what it's called.
I think it's a little bit more politically correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it's been a while. But I always put those in there, and I have a huge Ziploc bag in the back of my jersey pocket. It's like sometimes I'm just like I just need that palate cleanser, right?
Yeah.
But sticking to those fueling principles, and it's kind of like the same ideas that sometimes that we do in business is like done is better than perfect. So just trying to stay on top of it so we're not creating more issues further along in the race.
Yeah.
Or the next day in our recovery.
Yeah. Okay, here's the complicating factor. Let's throw a wrench in. Haha. Woohoo. So often when we're slowing down, it's because there's a problem. What do you think that problem is, Stevie?
Usually thigh issues is usually
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
All right. So this is obviously not exactly related to what we're talking about, but it is kind of, right? So why are we slowing down? Well, often there's something wrong. So this is one we hear often. Okay, well, I'm slowing down. I'm struggling to eat and drink. I have diarrhea. I'm nauseous. I'm vomiting. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a whole different topic. We won't go too into it, but I feel like I had to mention it. So what do you have to say about that?
I'm going to say that like at the bare minimum, if you are not able to get fluids down,
we got a problem.
We got a big problem, right? Like if you're in that situation, obviously slowing down is a good thing to do. Typically, I tell my Ironman athletes, like if they start to feel a little wonky, like on the bike, their stomach's feeling a little weird, back off for a little bit. It is a long day. Let that heart rate come down, right? Going back to the gastric emptying that I talked about, the higher intensity, your body is not prioritizing digestion. So if we start to experience this in those longer races, longer duration, slowing down, allowing the heart rate to come down, focusing on like what you can still get in, and maybe that is only some fluids, like ideally sports drink, if we can get some sips of sports drink, or if like you are in an ultra or an Ironman and there's chicken broth, flat Coke, like slow down, walk, try to get some fluids in. Because you can't, like, I have had people recover from this in that long of a race if they just like slow down right away, try to keep making sure they're getting fluids on board.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's
bad
not
news.
It's not a good scene, right?
Yeah. And then I think you had mentioned earlier, like you are still moving. So just to kind of be clear, we're not talking about like, oh, you decide to spend 30 minutes seated in a aid station chair. Like that's a little different, like, yeah, obviously I'd still like you to get some fluids and all that stuff in because you probably are still in a big old deficit. But that's different than I'm walking or I'm doing this. So so we're kind of talking about lots of different situations here. We're talking about, okay, you're moving along at a faster pace for you, which still may be mid back of the pack, and then you have a problem, you slow down. So we're talking about that. We're talking about maybe you have zero problems. You have a fantastic day. You're feeling amazing. You just happen to be a back of the pack runner or triathlete or whatever we're talking about. So, whatever the case may be, yes, you are, because you're, let's assume if you are at a lower intensity, if you are indeed at a lower intensity, yes, you are relying a little bit less on the exogenous carbohydrate. However, you are out there so much longer. So if we're comparing you to, a front pack athlete, and who is just going at such a high intensity and burning through so many carbohydrate and all that. So yes, you are burning less, but you are out there for so long. Right. So you are out there. So if we're thinking, just because we were talking about marathoner, like if you are a 6-hour marathoner versus a 3-hour marathoner, you are burning at least as much, if not more energy, because you're out there for twice as long. Right. So we want to also think about that time, like you are moving your body for a significantly longer time. So again, we want to fuel that work. So your fueling plan may look different. You very well may not need super high carb fueling. If you are an ultra athlete, you're a long course triathlete, all that stuff. Yeah, you probably are bringing in a little, some protein, a little bit of fat, like other things, because you likely can tolerate it. Because again, especially if you are moving at that lower intensity, we can work those things in. You don't have that gastric emptying problem as much as you're talking about. So this really changes the type of fueling and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Is there anything else you feel like we should call attention to? I think we really covered a lot of it, but yeah, any other kind of key takeaways or angles that we haven't explored here?
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot, and it's just, again, like staying curious, playing around with it, really having an open mind to trying, like, okay, let me try this fuel, let me push the carbs a little bit higher, see how I feel, kind of playing around with the different sources. And, if you are racing a really long time, like having some contingencies, like I kind of mentioned, the adapt and overcome, that's part of the long course racing is like, if you don't have the skills, working with a sports dietitian to be savvy as to like, okay, like I absolutely cannot take another cliff block, nothing against cliff blocks, but that's just comes to mind. But like, what else can I do? Because the answer is going to never be like, just stop fueling altogether. But figure out how you can make adjustments on the fly and stay ahead of things. So you're never digging too big of a hole there when it comes to the fueling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think really the biggest message here is for people who are mid and especially back of the pack, your fueling is still so incredibly important. Please don't minimize it. You are still doing such incredible stuff out there. You're working hard in your body, you're moving your body, and we got to fuel that work. So yes, your fueling plan may look different. You may not need quite as many gels per hour, all that kind of stuff, but you still need to fuel. You still need carbohydrate. Don't shy away from all of this. And yeah, I think that's all I got to say on it.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the intensity, right?
Yeah, what's intense for you? What is intense for you? Try not, like, this is where, like, the comparison game, don't, I saw somewhere else, I forget where I read this, but slow is not a pace, and just thinking, okay, well, yeah, if my pace is 14-minute miles or whatever it is you're doing, and you're like finishing, DFL or whatever, right? Like you are still doing the thing and thinking about how it feels to you. Did that still feel hard? Did that still feel like a lot of effort? If you're not quote unquote racing, I'm sure you've had plenty of people, oh, do I still need a carb load? I'm not racing it. Okay, yeah, you're still doing the thing. So like, let's fuel that. And maybe if you are at that lower intensity, we can kind of adjust. But yeah, that's our big message, guys. Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stevie. Where can everyone find you online and give you a follow and check out your services if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, you can find me on my corner of the internet at Stevie Lin on Instagram or at my website at stevielinrd.com. I also have my own podcast, which Claire has been on and will be back on soon.
Yay!
Called The Real Fuel with SLS Podcast, so be sure to tune in.
And I feel like we have to dress up in matching outfits again next time.
Right.
Maybe we'll pick a different color.
No.
Thanks so much, Stevie. See you next time.
Yeah.
That's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Before you go, I have a huge favor to ask. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you be willing to share it with a friend or on social media? I would also appreciate it if you're able to leave me a 5-star rating and review. And be sure to hit follow or subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss an episode. Also, I have some affiliate codes that you can use to help support my free content if you'd like. You can use, for instance, Eat for Endurance 20 over at Scratch Labs if you're a first-time customer, and you can visit the shop page on eatforendurance.com for all of my other affiliate codes. Lastly, I do have a Patreon page that I've linked to in the show notes for as little as $1, or you can really give as much as you want, but there are lots of free perks involved, so I encourage you to go visit that page. As always, please get in touch with any feedback, topic requests, or just to say hi. I would absolutely love to hear from you. All right, see you guys next time.